And good morning. Oh, wrong button. Well, not wrong button, wrong set. Anyway, howdy.
Hi.
How you doing?
Well, I'm good. I haven't been arrested for posting an absolutely violent, evil
Psychotic screed. Okay, I want to bury the lead a little bit on this one. And I'm going to bury the lead a little bit on this one on purpose to make an important point about burying the lead. So before we get into why we're covering this, I'm going to read most of parts. Well, I'm going to read parts of these three articles. Got an article on this topic from CNN, one from the LA Times. The LA Times, and one from Huffington Post. And amusingly, I think Huffington Post might have done the best job with this one. And that's saying
something.
Not nearly enough. So, let's take a look at these articles. Former UCLA lecturer tied to a violent manifesto is in custody after allegedly making threats against university, authorities say. So, that headline is wholly insufficient, but it does give us the reason that I accepted the haranguing from Legion, by the way, to cover this story today. Today is Firearms Friday, and we would normally be doing important firearms news. We're still gonna be talking about the importance of your Second Amendment rights, and there's a lot of that to talk about here. So after we dig into these articles a bit and talk about this professor of race philosophy, or I'm sorry, professor of philosophy of race, a doctoral fellow, we're going to talk a little bit about campus carry and why it matters and why it's not adequate, even here in Georgia, where we nominally have, in theory, campus carry, but we really don't. But
we have something called campus carry.
Yeah, we have something called campus carry. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. So, former UCLA lecturer tied to a violent manifesto is in custody after allegedly making threats against university, authorities say. I know, Legion, I know. I'm getting there. And I'm going to read these. I'm going to read these as fast as I can because I really just want to get through the information that's missing is what you need to be paying attention here. A former UCLA lecturer is in custody for allegedly making threats toward the university after emails with a link to an 800-page manifesto containing very alarming accounts of violence led investigators to Boulder, Colorado, according to authorities. CNN, you have already failed. You have already managed to leave out one of the most important key details in this case. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a second. Upon reviewing the emails, UCLA police tracked the author, identified as Matthew Christopher Harris, 31, to Colorado. Boulder Police Chief Maris Harold announced on Tuesday. So, this guy teaches at UCLA, publishes his manifesto, and thankfully, he made the mistake of going to Boulder after making threats against the college there. And so now his charges are going to go to the federal level, and they are going to be terror charges. And
hello, 30-year sentence.
I hate to spoil too much, but if this guy doesn't get hate crime charges, if he's not charged with a hate crime, then we're completely vindicated in having said that hate crimes do not exist. But again, I'm burying the lead on purpose here. Upon reviewing parts of the manifesto, we identified thousands of references to violence, stating things such as killing, death, murder, shootings, bombs, schoolyard massacre in Boulder, and phrases like burn and attack Boulder outside of the university, Harold said. The level of violence that we saw in the manifesto was obviously so alarming, said the chief. I can tell you it was very violent, very disturbing. The Boulder PD SWAT team was activated shortly before 8 a.m. local time, and nearby schools, homes, and businesses were evacuated while the suspect's apartment was surrounded. Crisis intervention team and negotiators reached Harris by phone, and after speaking to him several times very briefly, took him into custody without incident, Harold said. It is unclear whether Harris has an attorney. Today was a scary day for people. Okay, so I can keep going, but I've made my point, and if you need to fact check me on this, the buried lead doesn't even appear in the CNN article. And again, get to that. UCLA instructors' behavior alarmed students before threats of mass campus violence. The Los Angeles Times. To his students at UCLA, the warning signs about lecturer Matthew C. Harris seemed abundant and long-standing. Oh, what might those have been? By the spring 2021 quarter, the philosophy lecturer had gained a reputation as odd and quixotic, speaking haltingly, changing his syllabus willy-nilly, and spending the first 4 weeks of his philosophy of race class without once showing his face on Zoom.
Quixotic, huh? Sure. He's right there with Don Quixote. He was just going to attack some windmills. It's fine.
Well, quixotic is single-minded and focused.
I know, but it is derived from the story.
Derived from the Quixote. Don Quixote. And apparently his Sancho Panza is a Christopher Dorner. So, if y'all don't remember, things got weirder as the term progressed. Students said, leading up to a final exam that included an essay question about the hate-filled manifesto of Christopher Dorner, a former LAPD officer whose 2013 shooting rampage killed 4 people and wounded 3 others. Students were asked to consider their oppression, disrespect, and loss of dignity suffered by the homicidal ex-cop. Okay, this is, yep, Legion's already, I'm getting there, buddy. So, Dorner was a...
Can we say it yet? Is it far enough in?
A black serial killer who went on a rampage murdering people and posted a racist manifesto about why he needed to murder all these white people. Right? So but again, this doesn't mention anything about the racism from Harris. So, now we've got Huffington Post, which, as I said, maybe did the best job out of these 3 of covering it. UCLA classes to resume after lecturer arrested over threats of violence. Okay, that headline, still wholly inadequate. But, at least these guys had the gall to point out that Harris makes racist comments in several of the videos and cryptically names specific locations on the UCLA campus, noting that they've been added to his list, according to the Times. But I definitely want to bring you back to this sentence right before that. The police search for Harris began after he sent his former students an email early Sunday that was full of slurs against Jewish and East Asian people, according to the Los Angeles Times. They can't even mention that the slurs and the violence was also explicitly directed at white people. So, you'll notice...
Basically anybody who's not an American black.
Right. And of a particular... who's also politically black, with a capital B.
Yeah, well, he was more worried about a capital R.
Apparently. So, you'll notice that in these articles, there are no pictures of Harris. There's not a shot of him being arrested. That picture exists. We've seen it. See, there's no picture of Harris here. There's just not B-roll, just stock footage of...
30 or 40 paragraphs, and they leave out a couple of pieces of information.
No pictures at all. Just stock footage of the campus. Right? And again, just a stock footage of one of the most famous buildings on the campus. No images.
I guess we should talk about that, Alex.
And there you go. This is the man in question. Yes, he is a black man. He is a black man who has, and I'm not going to pull up clips from the manifesto because he uses the N-word in all caps with a hard R
deliberately,
repeatedly and deliberately, and says that his position is basically that black men of a certain political bent should refer to themselves using the N-word and the hard R, and that is a specific philosophical position to be in, which makes you part of a master race. He refers to them as a master race. And quite frankly, Legion points out he uses the word in that context over 10,000 times in the course of an 800-page violent manifesto, which begins with, Chapter 1 basically declares himself a god. Chapter 2, the capital N-word is a movement of the black master race, and hard R must be used whenever pronounced. Yes, Legion, I'm reading directly from your messages on this. Chapter 3, all whites are lesser men and must be killed and raped unless the woman surrenders herself completely to the majesty of the capital N-word. Chapter 4, anything created by whites must be destroyed. Art, architecture, music, food, literally everything. And he goes on in a screed like this. Guys.
So wait, so no more batteries? Because Voltaire...
Well, basically, you cannot find a white supremacist's manifesto that is this aggressive, this totally dedicated to the eradication of another race. If you want to find anything approaching a white supremacist manifesto, this dedicated to the elimination of another race, you have to go all the way back to Margaret Sanger. Yeah, I went there.
It's appropriate.
It should be funny.
No, it's not funny.
Exactly.
Because it's Black History Month again.
Legion says they produce batteries by force of soul. And yes, that is entirely in line with the claims that are being made. So what you see here is outlets like CNN, UCLA too, the LA Times, Huffington Post, they all go out of their way to bury the lead, to hide that what has happened here is a black supremacist was just arrested apparently in the middle of executing a plan to conduct a massive casualty event at another college.
Oh.
Having crossed state lines to do so.
Yeah.
And the only reason he wasn't able to slaughter a large number of the student body is because he was stopped by the police after he published a manifesto that said, I'm going to genocide you. The guy's talking about, as Legion mentions in the comments there, Legion uses the phrase, he preached total global genocide. That's not an exaggeration. He uses that language in his manifesto, total global genocide. But CNN, the LA Times, and Huffington Post, these are just three examples of radically left-wing news sources who actively support and are doing their best to run cover for this violent genocidal maniac.
Hey, and can I just point out real quick? He was arrested by Stades, essentially. He was arrested. Okay, so he was arrested by Colorado police.
Yep.
Not the FBI.
Correct.
You want to bet me that the FBI already had a file on this guy?
The FBI is refusing to comment.
You don't say. Really? You mean the FBI knew about a domestic terrorist who was other than white and just went lay whoops? So if the Colorado police had not gotten involved, this could have been the Pulse nightclub or Columbine or Virginia Tech all over again.
So eventually, this is from the LA Times article. Eventually, one student said she reported Harris to campus authorities and the FBI after he directed another student to his YouTube channel, which included disturbing references to sexual perversion and bomb threats to Los Angeles International Airport. UCLA removed the postdoctoral fellow from his post last spring after emails he sent to his mother uncovered even more graphic and specific alleged threats. So, you've got a student that reported him at some point before he was removed. He was removed from his postdoctoral fellowship last spring, and he was just arrested this week.
But not by the FBI.
So, yes, that is correct. The FBI was informed credibly that a violent ethno-supremacist was out there plotting the genocide of an entire race. And, well, I mean, it's not complicated. He's not white, so the FBI is not interested in hurting him. Because the FBI is an enforcement wing of BLM now.
Hey, but you know what? We sure did smack Whoopi on the hand. And I'm glad we've got our priorities in order.
If there's any doubt.
And then while you're pulling something up, Alex says, I'm sure these news outlets are oblivious to the fact that they created this guy. I'm gonna somewhat disagree with you, Alex. I don't think they're oblivious to that fact at all.
They did it on purpose.
Yeah. The problem is this guy was gonna say the quiet part out loud. Right? He just took it too far. But the fact that, well, Chris and I are the enemy. We are the white devils, as it were. Like, that's what they want.
And it looks like most of our chick audience isn't here this morning, so you guys, basically everybody watching this, they seek to murder you. And like, if there's any doubt about the extent to which the government support runs, Governor of Illinois gave $300,000 in federal COVID relief funds to BLM chapter. That's right. So you've got government officials taking COVID relief money. That's your federal tax money that's going into the federal coffers, then being distributed out to the states, and then being funneled by local corrupt politicians into BLM. Right? This is a thing that's just breaking news within the last couple of days. And that's, Legion mentions that BLM apparently embezzled $60 million. Apparently it's much larger than that, because through all of the tax filings there have been, the financial transparency of BLM has been abysmal. And it has basically been one big cash grab to fund radical terrorism committed by violent ethno-supremacists. BLM is an ethno-supremacist terrorist group.
It reminds me of Sean King. What was the one that dude founded? Was Sean King the original BLM guy? Mm-mm. The one we refer to as Talcum X?
No, he wasn't the original BLM guy, but he has been actively.
He was something though. I forget exactly what he was, but.
And the Polak is right. It is like Afghanistan. We're paying the terrorists to fight us. We're paying the terrorists. We're funding their weapons. We're funding their activity. That's what's happening. Your tax dollars are being routed out of your pocket, and just like every other Democrat mechanism, just like Planned Parenthood, where tax dollars are funneled into Planned Parenthood so that Planned Parenthood can funnel them back into the DNC, everything that exists on the left is at least in part of one big money-washing mechanism to rob you of your money at government gunpoint and put it into the pocket of illicit actors who seek your destruction and downfall.
Well, we've said this so many times, but it really bears repeating at this point. Even going back to something Alex said, this guy really is just an outgrowth of the sort of hate and division that the left, the media, I don't think there's really much difference outside of the name.
There's not.
Okay, exactly. So this guy's just a natural outgrowth of all that. And it's important to understand that all this has to happen this way through the money laundering and all that. Because if the left was honest about what they wanted and how it would work, I say I'm just going to pick a number, but I don't think it's wrong. I would say 90% of their ideas would never even make it out of committee, so to speak. Because, like, for example, if you knew that the point of the Green New Deal, okay, was to say you are not allowed to eat beef, and the politicians are still allowed to fly because they can trade carbon credits on Wall Street, which would get even richer, by the way, because now they're allowed to trade puffs of smoke.
Right. So basically, if you understood up front that the Green New Deal was intended to do everything that they ended up doing anyway through COVID restrictions, then you never would have voted for it.
Exactly. And it's why organizations like BLM have to exist the way that they have to. It's not hard to find out that they're a Marxist organization where they've swapped out the class struggle for the race struggle and that they want the destruction of the nuclear family. Hell, they'll tell you that the nuclear family is an inherently racist concept.
This is a perfect sentence, Legion. Harris is the distilled perfection of hate resulting from decades of Marxist racial dialectic. Yes. 100% yes. That is a perfect sentence. Now, let me move on to campus carry for a minute. Obviously, they don't have campus carry in California, right?
California.
In theory, we have campus carry here in Georgia. I was actually attending college when campus carry was passed, and I suddenly one day went from being a criminal who was always armed no matter what to being a lawfully armed citizen who was always armed no matter what. I even remember...
So it's 2017?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're probably outside of the statute of limitations for admitting that on air.
Well, and I mean, come and get me.
They might. You're white.
Good luck.
I'm just saying, they might. You're white.
Yeah,
But you're outside of the statute of limitations.
Please come and get me.
Let's be clear.
So, like, I remember one day, and this was after the campus carry bill was passed. I was at the college, and we were working on some student film stuff, and we had a piece of equipment that wasn't acting right, and I reached back and I pulled out my little Leatherman to pop out the
tool,
the Phillips head screwdriver, and tightened something up and fixed a piece of equipment, and then I folded it back up and put it away. And one of the other students, this like 17, 18-year-old kid looks at me and says, "Are you allowed to have a knife on campus?" I'm like, I'm wearing a .357 Magnum right now, and yeah, that's totally allowed. If you don't know this, you should learn the law, because, son, you have rights. Even if some of those rights are being curtailed by the government illicitly, you have rights. You should exercise those rights. And you should fight back when those rights are being curtailed. For example, under the Georgia carry, campus carry, you have this is the University System of Georgia.edu. Information on House Bill 280. And again, this law is a few years old now, but it's still important. HB2 can licensed holders carry concealed handguns in laboratories on campus? Yes, I've done it. HB 280 sets out specific accepted areas in which licensed holders may not carry handguns, and laboratories are not one of those exceptions, right? At summer camps on campus, yes, summer camps are not set out as an exception to the ability, blah, blah, blah. Can licensed carry concealed in health centers and exam rooms on campus? Yes. Health centers and their examination rooms are not specifically accepted, blah, blah, Now, sporting events. It says handguns are prohibited in buildings or property that are used for intercollegiate games at all times, not just during the events. This is because they have this theory that you shouldn't be able to carry your handgun if you're going to be in the same room with a person who is a minor. Because a minor never went in and conducted a mass shooting that needed to be stopped by an armed person.
No. Columbine is just a figment of your imagination.
Well, I mean, obviously they were both adults, right? Not current students.
No, it was a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Heritage High School. That kid was totally of age, right?
Right.
Figment of your imagination.
Total.
Didn't happen. You don't know. You weren't there. But it goes on to say this: the same is true of student housing facilities. Handguns are prohibited throughout the facilities, not only in the specific areas where students reside. So the majority of you attending a college and living in the dorm are still having your Second Amendment right curtailed by this illicit piece of law. And when I say that, I say it advisedly. This is the University System of Georgia making this statement. This is a law that was passed by the state of Georgia that makes this determination. That you are a certain class of person, and by dint of being in that designated class, i.e. college students who live in a dorm on campus, even if you are of legal age, which is still incorrect under the application of the law, and licensed to carry a handgun, right? Even if you have spent the money to purchase your rights back from the government that stole them from you at gunpoint, even if you've done those things, you are still not allowed to carry a firearm, which is your God-given right if you happen to be in the category of people that live in the dormitory. Now, I suppose in theory you could have a gun that you keep locked in your car when you're not in the dorm, but for all intents and purposes, this means that if you live in the dorm, well,
You're
to
not
hell
armed.
with you, you don't get rights. So
Zaluska says handguns are legal everywhere a metal detector isn't. In my brain, you know, that's a really funny way to put that.
actually, that's the law. In the state of Georgia, with the exception of federal properties, if there is not a metal detector, you're good to go. Because basically what the law requires is for a place to be considered a secure facility into which you are not allowed under the law to carry your firearm, that facility is required to implement security measures like a magnetometer to prevent the carry of a firearm into the building. Again, that doesn't apply to state properties. So you're still out of compliance if you're, say, for example, in the post office with your weapon. But state facilities that, like, for example, the library, public library, you're good to go.
Man, when I lived in Rockmart, I guarantee you 50% of everybody that walked into that post office had their gun on them.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Like, I mean, they didn't advertise the fact that they had their gun on them, but like that was just. There are certain things about that town that I miss. Certain things about that town I don't miss.
Yeah.
But certain things, there's a lot of things about that town that I miss.
So, to put a button on it, they seek to disarm you. They want you to die.
Unless you submit. He said it right there in his screed. If you'll submit and surrender to the majesty.
That was only for women. He was pretty clear about that.
Oh, I know.
If you're a woman and you submit to be raped, then you can be spared.
Well, that's cool. I identify as a woman anytime somebody tries to rape me. How's that for dark?
All right, here's your weekend safety brief. Carry a daily firearm. That's the safest thing you can do. Y'all be safe out there. And, yeah, Polytech says federal property is off limits, including the parking lot of the post office.
Oh yeah, Alex.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying when I lived in that town, like you just needed to assume everybody was. You needed to assume people were armed in church. You needed to assume people were armed at the post office. Like it was what it was.
Yeah. And Alex is right. Federal property is off limits, including the parking lot of the post office. Same thing like if I go to the VA, you know, because of the rules, I have to leave my gun at home and go to the VA because I can't have it in my truck when I'm in their parking lot even. So I can't be lawfully armed everywhere else I go and then have an appointment at the VA or stop at the post office to drop off a letter without going home, dropping my firearm off at the house, and then going back to the place where I need to do business.
Thanks for serving the country in the most high-risk occupation we have. Now leave your gun at home.
Yeah. Yeah, we appreciate your sacrifice, but fuck your rights. That's right. We made it all the way to the end of the episode.
And then F-bomb.
Boom.